Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I want to address the nature of music from my experiences as a musician. I've spoken about the music industry and I want to touch on this point. So basically, the more I became proficient as a musician, the more I began to see the power and the effects that music could have on a person. How it could stir powerful emotions, change moods, take the mind far away from the reality of the situation. I used to play at various shows and improvisation sessions, like jams. We used to play at different jams, and we would play for hours on end sometimes, getting into like trance, literally like trance-like states. And I would be playing for so long that I would get into these states and I would do things that I would never normally be able to do. It literally felt like it was not from me. And other people have mentioned this as well. I want to mention a couple of points highlighting how music can really affect people. Just a couple of experiences that I had that are quite vivid in my mind. So once I was sitting at a friend's house in Finsbury Park, and we were listening to Miles Davis, one of his concept albums, which was called Bitches Brew. It was very dark. This was a time where Miles Davis was heavily into heroin, and this reflected in his music, the darkness of this music. So after about 15 minutes of listening to this album, one of our friends started freaking out, saying like, this is not right, man. And he ran out of the room, ran out of the flat, went back to his house, I guess. He couldn't handle it. Being in multiple shows and touring and going to concerts all the time, seeing different musicians play different genres, you'd see how the differing genres would change moods accordingly. So for example, like a grime rave, for example, or a garage rave, a certain track would come on and people would literally, they'd literally ban certain tracks because fights would break out because it was so hyped and it would cause such a stir, such like aggression from the people because of the way that the music was and the lyrics. It would break out into fights. People could even get stabbed up or shot. Also like a funky house rave or something, or deep house, or like a neo soul concert. It would stir like sexual behavior and lower the inhibitions. When you're mixing that now with alcohol and drugs, and even just the way that the lights are, the way that the sound system is, it's very powerful, and people literally do things that they would never do. On another occasion, we played in West End at a club, and we had some problems with the security on the door, and one of the people that we were with, he got very offended, and to the point that he was considering calling up some of his friends in South London to basically shoot up the door. And we got back to my house, my flat. We were relaxing after all of this madness, all of this stuff took place. Yeah, we put on D'Angelo's album, Voodoo. And I think it was the track Devil's Pie. I remember singing, he was like zoning out, just listening to the music. And he said, D'Angelo's right. Sometimes you just have to give in. You've just got to give in to yourself and let it happen. Basically in reference to like him pondering over, should I shoot up the door? Should I call up my boys to shoot up the door, or should I not, because of his bruised ego? The point here is literally how music can alter the mind, which I realized was a phenomenon that could create false sense of filling that void that existed within myself. And despite despite its power and my love for it, it didn't fill that void, as I mentioned before. And after embracing Islam and tasting the sweetness of Iman, the sweetness of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I now see music as something that creates the illusion of Iman for the weak heart. It's insidious and it warps the heart. People use it to create that feeling of Iman where Iman should actually be. Obviously, not all music is the same, and not all music is like grime or death metal or gangster rap. And someone could say, not all music is bad, and that many will not have gone through the experiences that I went through. However, the most harmless sounding music has a profound effect on one's mental state. This is not just me saying this from my experience and other musicians, but also psychologists, musicologists, who in different studies, they've shown what can happen to a person when listening to the most unassuming of music, the most harmless sounding of music, subconsciously, even subconsciously without realizing they're listening to music. They've shown that how inhibitions are lowered and how people are more susceptible to lie, to cheat, to act in a generally dishonest way. This is a number of different researchers from different non-Muslim academics and scientists. To understand the reality from a psychological perspective with regards to the effect and the power of music on the mind and the heart, there's a book called The Music Made Me Do It. It's this book here, The Music Made Me Do It. Yeah, it's interesting, so I recommend it. Also, the foundations of rhythm and melody trace back to their origins are heavily rooted in animism, shamanism, ancestor worship, cross-culturally. I touched on this a bit in another video. Then their origins are not generally neutral with regards to just entertainment. That's not the origins of rhythm and melody and music. They're linked to spirituality and rituals and worship. And touching back on shamanism, practitioners of the occult and shamanism, they use music to open these doorways to the supernatural. This is intrinsically part of their traditions and their rituals and the way in which they come into contact with the unseen and the supernatural. This bit has been obviously obscured from popular music culture, but similar effects are still seen, to be honest with you, in the rave, in the jazz jam, in the club. Yeah, to be honest with you, I saw so much strange behavior and people changing like that. All of these experiences, scientific, psychological studies, all of these aside, the main point for us as Muslims is the hukum shar'i, is the Islamic ruling. You could take all of these experiences and all of these scientific studies that has no weight on the scale compared to the hukum shar'i. If you really want to understand what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions and those that followed them said about music, the most scholarly and thorough material I've found regarding this in English is of our brother Farid Abdullah. He's got a 3-part series about the rulings pertaining to music. It's very thorough, it's very scholastic. I haven't seen anything else like this. Inshallah, I'll put the link in the video. And also, brother Mutabil, on his website, he's got a talib from, I think it was al-Qura. He did a big research regarding music, and I found that very beneficial. These two in English, very, very strong. Obviously in Arabic, there are many books and many buhuth about music and what the Salaf said regarding music. I recommend all of the stuff of Farid Abdullah because he's very scholastic in the way that he teaches, and he always brings everything back to the foundations of our religion. So his lectures regarding Aqidah, Creed, Manhaj, methodology of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the methodology of how the Muslims understand their religion. May Allah reward the brother. He helped me so much in understanding the usul of our deen, the foundations of our religion.